So let's just start with, why don't you both just introduce yourselves and tell me a little bit about why you wanted to join us for this oral history project.
Okay.
Well, my name is Carl Susnitzky. Born in Danbury in '33. My father, native, born in the about 1890 something. They were not sure the way the records were kept. They were not sure. Not sure it was 1892, 1893. We lived on White Street. My house that I lived at, 199 White Street, is now part of Westcon, and it was a fairly not good, decent neighborhood. On the corner of 8th Avenue, John Leahy was the owner of that house. John was the owner and runner of the Great Danbury Fair.
Mm-hmm. Leahy Fuel.
And also Leahy Fuel. Next to him was a gentleman named Perry Katz. Perry owned the Pershing Building in those days. And next to him was Mr. Yasser, who had a bar on White Street. And then came my father and myself and the rest of our family. Next to that was the Bloom family. They were involved in the fur business in Danbury. And believe it or not, next to them was Bobby's Tourists. A lot of people don't know, but there was a tourist house on White Street. It was one house away from Old Main in Westcon. So we have great memories, and introduce you to my wife Barbara, who also was born and brought up on White Street.
You know, I was born in Danbury, but in a different area. We also lived on, what's the name of the street?
Moss Avenue?
Yeah, Moss Avenue for a while. But mainly we lived on White Street. Both Carl and my homes, two of my homes, they're just taken apart and gone. They don't exist. His house doesn't exist. It's very unusual. We met, he's 4 years older than I, but 5 years ahead of me in school, so that we never overlapped in the school system. And I really didn't know him until I worked in a pharmacy while I went to high school and college, and he became a pharmacist. His brother owned part of the pharmacy, and that's how I met Carl and how we started dating and so forth and so on. We went to local schools. We both went to White Street School, which no one ever heard of. It was, about 228 White Street or
Sounds
so?
about right.
About that, 230, 228 White Street. Four-room school, first, second, third, fourth. And you went all 4 grades.
Yes, I did.
When I was after third grade, they closed it. And unfortunately, Locust Avenue School, which is now the alternative school, didn't have room for a group of us. So they bused us to New Street School. New Street School is where the fire headquarters is now. And beautiful brick building. But the bathrooms were outside.
Oh, no.
Boys on one side of the building, girls on the other. That must have been 4th through 7th, and then at 7th grade, I could have gone back to Locust Avenue, but instead took the city bus to Main Street School, which became the police station, which is now a medical building right down the street from the library. It was I enjoyed it so
the
much.
old City Hall? That was the City Hall before. There was a police station, wasn't it?
No, the old City Hall is where we are.
Oh, okay.
This was City Hall in Danbury. What about your education, dear? What did you do locally?
White Street School, and Locust Avenue School for 1 year, and then to Main Street School, which was 7th and 8th, and Danbury High School, and then the University of Connecticut College of Pharmacy for 4 years. Our class was at Storrs. It was the first year pharmacy was taught at Storrs. It moved from New Haven. Previous to that, it was in an old Yale building in New Haven. White Street was sort of interesting. My parents ran a store, very, very active and busy store at the railroad station, 365 days a year. My father said during World War II they used to open at 8 and close at midnight. And later on, They got more conservative and closed at 10 o'clock. And they were very busy. I used to, on a Friday night, for example, both my mother and father were in the store, so I would walk to the diner, Durkin's Diner, a well-known place in Danbury, just the other side of the White Street School they were talking about. And I recall I would have a halibut dinner for $1, the whole works. And it was very good. And I got to know Charlie and Jim Durkin, who ran Durkin's Diner for many, many years. Very interesting place.
Well, White Street is a wonderful street. It had some stately, beautiful old homes on it. If you're going toward Main Street, on that left-hand side, they would have beautiful homes along the road, but well behind them was part of the Still River. And that river would run colors. Remember, we were hatters, and they used dyes. So that we called it the swamp. And even though mothers and fathers said, don't play there, I'm sure just about everybody did. And every once in a while, somebody would be ice skating there when they shouldn't and fell in and died. There was also a slight smell to the fur factories and that were down maybe 2-3 blocks away from where we all lived. As a little girl, I would walk up White Street with my doll carriages. We would dress up our cats sometimes and push them. We would roller skate up and down the street. We would roller skate in front of Danbury High School on White Street. Big concrete, was wonderful. It was just a lovely street then. Not that it isn't interesting now, because look at how the college has expanded on it. When I went to WestCon, it was a small school. It was teachers' college, music teachers too, and a small science department. Now it's just a wonderful school. I'm so proud of what it's become, as I'm sure you're proud of UConn. From the school, I was very fortunate when I graduated from Danbury High School. I got the Danbury Teachers Association scholarship, and that almost paid for 4 years at Wisconsin. Can you imagine? From there, I taught in Richfield for 3 years. We had married. We had our first child. We have 3 children, all who went through Danbury schools. I would say they're all very successful. They went to, one has a PhD from Cornell, one went to Wheaton College, one is a women's college, and our youngest has 2 degrees from Columbia and is a health educator in one of the largest high schools in Brooklyn, Edward R. Murrow. They all loved Danbury, but nobody lives here now, except one daughter. And we have one grandchild locally. It's a sophomore in high school. Tell them about our family in California.
Yeah, we visit California once or twice a year, and every year at least for Thanksgiving. And son works for Apple, scientist for Apple, commutes to all over the world. In 2 weeks, he's not going to go to Shanghai again. And I said, well, can you stand the flight? Send me first class. He says, it's wonderful.
Life is hard, yeah.
And his daughter-in-law teaches school out there, as well as granddaughter's a teacher in the San Jose area system. And the grandson is a air traffic controller. And he's happy because last week he got paid. And he's very happy. He's wanted to be an air traffic controller since he was a little guy. And he's been very successful. He's already in the supervisory area. I was thinking a little bit about the railroad station where my father's store was located. It was a very, very active place, and a couple of things happened. People would line up for a late paper. The World Telegram and Sun, the Journal American would come in 7 and 8 o'clock at night.
On the trains.
From the train in New York. And people were so excited to get the final stock market results or details of the baseball and all kinds of things that happened later in the day. Now that is a secondary thing. And trains, the Danbury line was from New York to Pittsfield. And they stopped in Danbury because they had to convert from electric to steam. So they on the way, they made a 10 or 15 minute stop. And the people on the train used to rush either into my father's place to get a coffee or a magazine or a newspaper, or they go to Dave's Old Six. That was another place located at the depot area known as Canal Street to get a beer or a sandwich or a shot of booze, whatever. And they were always in a hurry because, you know, they had 8 or 10 minutes to get this done. So that was sort of interesting. And that happened 2 or 3 times a day. The trains went from New York to Pittsfield. And they were especially busy in the summertime because there were a number of camps for children in the Pittsfield area, and they put on many, many extra trains in the summer for that reason. My background is in pharmacy, originally anyhow, and it's been many, many changes on Main Street in Danbury. I used to know every pharmacist along the way. It was from Rogers Park, Ed Sarantidis, and then there was Burns Drugstore, which was on the corner next to St. Peter's, Kinner's, which is the next block up near Penny's. Kinner's was a store. For some reason, the younger generation from high school and junior high school wound up going there after school for whatever reason. They had a soda fountain. Then Whalen's was the big monster store, which is really small and compared to what we have now. And down on the other corner, you had Svanken's store, which was actually it was in the Pershing Building, and it moved down to the corner of Elm Street. And then further up, Vinnie Ray had Ray's Drugstore. It was on the corner of North Main and Pat Street. So now all you have is Walgreens, I guess, along the way. It's a big change.
Yeah.
Did you work as a pharmacist yourself in Danbury?
I did for a while. I worked in my brother's store.
Yeah, your
But I
brother-
had to go to, my mother said, if you ever make $200 a week, it'd be wonderful. So I had to commute to Norwalk to make the $200 because they paid more. But I did leave pharmacy, and I've been involved in money managing with the same firm for over 50 years now.
Oh, wow.
And I still go to the office.
Well, tell them about Fonstock. I mean, this, where the first office was and where it moved.
Yeah. My first job was in Danbury with Fonstock and Company, an old line firm.
1881.
1881. The old man that ran it helped support the Civil War for the North, Mr. Fonstock. That was at 234 Main Street, in the second floor of the City Trust Building. That building had an elevator. It was the first, claimed to be the first elevator in Danbury, Connecticut, was in that building. And then we moved to 198 Main Street, which was the old Hotel Green. This was after the Green had changed to the New Englander. I happened to be there the day that they bombed the Union Savings, and the policemen were all over the street, and they came in our office. They were following somebody they thought was a suspect, and they grabbed him and everything, but it was the wrong guy. But it was exciting. And then we moved to the firm was bought out by Oppenheimer, and we moved to 301 Main Street. I forgot the original. I started with a very small firm at 388 Main Street. That was Collins and Morrow, and it's where the old IRS had an office in that building.
Edward A. Viner.
Yeah, E.A. Viner and Company. And now it's all changed.
But didn't Oppenheimer owns Edward A. Viner?
Yeah, they bought him out. They bought out.
Circle. Well, Fonstock
Fonstock bought out Oppenheimer,
but took the
and
Oppenheimer
they changed the name to Oppenheimer because Oppenheimer does a lot of advertising. They want to take advantage of their advertising. So the drug business has changed. Now it's all huge chains.
We've
And,
known so many people for so
Yeah.
long. The school system, my husband was on the school board for about 6 years.
6, 7 years.
6, 7 years. Was chairman at some point. The children in school, actually, while you were on the board, we had some problems in Danbury. And the schools and the churches and everyone worked very hard to educate people, to bring people together. The churches, the synagogues, and that were just amazing at that time. In fact, we had a human rights commission that I served on that slowly but surely went out of business. Carl and I have, you've also served on Charter
third
revision.
on charter revision, and the big thing in there was we had many, many meetings. The big thing that coming out of that was everybody had agreed to that the mayor of Danbury should have a 4-year term. It was fine until near the end. The political people didn't support it, and it failed when the vote came. But we worked hard to get some of these things done. And then I was appointed to head a committee to the firehouse on Ive Street was no longer usable. So they formed a committee, and I chaired it to find a place for the firehouse to go. Well, it was a very simple matter because New Street School was empty, a good location, so there was only one spot to go. So the fire department is now located at on New Street School, and there was a plaque in there for the people who served on the committee determining where the firehouse was going to be placed. So.
New Street School, I can remember the third floor moved. Oh, yes. So eventually they condemned it, and they couldn't use it. And then eventually the school went. I think the first thing I really became involved in was the League of Women Voters in Danbury. When I was teaching in Ridgefield High School as a history teacher, and the League of Women Voters in Ridgefield was very active and very helpful. So when I left teaching, we didn't have one here. So a group of us saw to it that the League of Women Voters came to Danbury, Connecticut. And I was fortunate to be president, to be a voter service chairperson, to do all kinds of things. And I cannot thank the men from the Lions Club of Danbury, who many businessmen and so forth, who were helpful with money, ideas, and so forth, who helped to support us. And when I look at today's world and men and women and what's happened in the workplace and so forth, I'm very thankful for the men, the husbands, whatever, who came forth and helped us with all kinds of things. I eventually became a director for the League of Women Voters of Connecticut. Unfortunately, both grandmothers became ill, and I had to leave that. But that's when I also was on the Commission for Human Rights and Opportunities. And in 1976, I got involved in the library. And I served
I'd love to hear more about that.
I served on the original board. The original board of directors was a city function. But there was also a library association, and they were in charge of the endowments, money that had been given and so forth. And it was a considerable amount of money. So over the years, I served on the city board, I served on the library association. And when I was on the library association in 1977, I guess we sent a couple of women. We went to Greenwich and looked at their library. They're friends of the library. And we started a Friends Here. What a wonderful organization, and it still is. They've had great people involved in it. We started the book sale. The first ones, I guess, we might have had a little one here, but then we used Rogers Park Junior High School, which is now Rogers Park Middle School. Ran out of room there, and it's just been a very successful undertaking, but a lot of time, a lot of effort. The women who are committed to that and the men, the city owes them a lot because it's made books available to people. It's made money available to the library, and they are very supportive, as you know.
Yeah, we have them to thank for the studio.
Yeah. At this time, I also became very involved in the Danbury Preservation Trust, which this has gone on forever too. Have been involved with Main Street in Danbury and trying to help it, trying to make sure the buildings that were worth saving were saved. Many of them now have plaques on them that will say that they are historical buildings. We've saved the original library. When I was a little girl, my best friend and I would walk down White Street, down to Main Street, walk to the library, and we started reading at one end of that children's department. I am not kidding you. Within 5 years, I think we'd read every book in that library. I can't say that all the librarians were the friendliest souls, but most of them were, and they encouraged. It was just a wonderful place with all the have you seen it? With the paintings on the walls and that?
I've seen photos. I haven't actually been there.
yeah, it was a wonderful place. From there, I think I went to the redevelopment agency. In 55, we had floods. We haven't talked about that because Carl, I think, was in the service at the time. In 1955 and 57, we had terrible floods in downtown Danbury. The Still River flooded. As a result of that flood, the state government undertook a corporation. They formed a corporation in Danbury to do the flood work. And I'm trying to remember, there were 20, I think eventually there were 20 acres where the Hawley building is now on the corner, in fact, where Carl's office was, on the corner of Main and White. All of that was all taken down. The river was rechanneled. There were whole pieces of property where the library is downtown, where the ice skating rink. All of those things were all done by the Danbury Redevelopment Agency. I'm trying to think of when I got involved in it. It's a semi-autonomous, the only thing other than the city that has the rights of condemnation. And it still exists. In fact, I still serve on it. But we do not really, we've run out of land. We're still under the planning department, and whoever's head of the planning department is now our head. But we used to have a separate office. We had a director. We had lawyers and so forth. It was one of the most interesting things that I ever did. Then along in 1984 came a letter from Mayor Dyer. Wouldn't I like to serve on the tricentennial celebration, the 300 years of Danbury? Ooh, would I. 2 years of just the most exciting things. I'll show you later. I brought some things to show you that the tricentennial that we did. Calendars, whatever. We had a tricentennial ball. We had parades. We had every function in Danbury. Any organization, they had a tricentennial whatever. We had the culminating activity was our day at City Hall, and we buried a time capsule. In the time capsule are things like what you're doing here, but of course not as sophisticated as anything we're doing now. Every child in the system, in the Danbury school system, could write what they thought it would be 100 years from now, or anything they wanted to. And it's buried in front of City Hall. There's a plaque that says where it is. Unfortunately, I'm never going to get to see it open, but it was, and companies, the different companies in Danbury contributed for it. And my husband, God bless him, has allowed me to give time. And I have to thank my children, and I have to thank, I've been able to serve under loads of different mayors. There were things like I chaired a United Way. My husband, tell her about the Lions Club.
Well, I was going to tell first about my experiences on the school board.
Oh, okay.
I was on the school board for, I think, about 9 years, wasn't I?
Yeah.
At the end of Ed Solari's administration and the beginning of Pat Nappy's superintendency. And for the most time, I was involved with the budget, working with the council and members of both parties that were on the school board, and long, dragged-out times. Meetings start at 7, and we get finished at midnight sometimes when we get close to budget time. And the meetings themselves were pretty interesting. We opened it up to the public, and certain members of the public, took advantage of it, and we weren't very polite, but we got used to that. One of the problems that we had before I got on the board, and while I was on the board, and afterwards, was open classrooms in junior high in Rogers Park. So a lot of discussion about that, parents, administrators, teachers, and round, and I guess finally it's solved. I don't know what the real answer is, but
Walls.
The walls were put up, so that was the answer. And also, I was involved. I was a member of the Danbury Lions Club. Primarily, we were known for years for the Lions Club playground, which was up around Locust Avenue.
I played in it.
With a swimming pool, etc. And it was a very active place. And naturally, they had to, sell raffle tickets, in some fashion, raise money to support it. For a couple of years, when I was close to being president, it was my job to raise some money. So we sold corn on the cob at the Danbury Fair. I never saw so much corn on the cob, and we sold a great deal of it. It was a success. We raised X number of dollars. That was quite a bit of work. So corn on the cob, sold by the Danbury Lions Club, with or without butter. So it was fun, but a lot of work. Near the Danbury Lions Club, on Osborne Street, between 9th and 7th Avenue, was a big empty field, which is now run by the Western Connecticut, called the Dust Bowl. And it was a dusty place, but we used to play ball there all the time. It was a huge place. You could hit a ball from one end to the other, and all you had to do was chase it. But there were people that lived in that area. They loved the Dust Bowl.
Some parts of it flooded in the winter, and if we were lucky, in a lucky winter, you could almost, if you were a little kid, you could skate there. You could slide in the banks. They had banks. We played. Everybody then played outside, and I think that continued until our kids were young. In our neighborhood, we lived on Field Road, which is up near Danbury High School, across from Danbury High School. And the kids could play at the Lower Cohanza Reservoir. They could ice skate on it.
Play hockey.
Play hockey on it. Catch pollywogs, whatever, whatever. That was wonderful. Everyone was out. They'd go outside in the morning, and they'd come back for lunch, and that no longer. We still have, our neighborhood's changed a lot over the years, and there's still kids. But nobody's outside. You never see kids outside anymore, except for we do see the Danbury High School runners. We're very proud of our track teams at Danbury High School, and we are blessed, I feel that they run up and down our hill on Field Road, and they're...
Hey, we just saw them this afternoon on the way here.
Mass of young men.
And for years, the gentleman who helped clean up and walk around with a bag and pick up any dirt.
On Cohanza Street.
Yeah, on Cohanza Street was Lieutenant Governor T. Clark Hull. He was
Judge Hull.
He was a judge too. He was part of the cleanup committee all the time.
When he retired, he would walk up and down Cohanza Street. And when he died, do you think one person anywhere in the neighborhood would ever think of doing that? We do have people who will come on Cohanza because it sides Ridgewood Country Club looking for golf balls, but nobody picks up, any litter. The last thing I really did and do is, I think, 1989, the director of the Bureau of Prisons for the United States decided there should be community relations boards throughout the country. So Danbury, federal, decided that they had one also. And I received a letter from the director, the warden, and I've been on it ever since. And it's been one of the most interesting things I've done. We have nothing to do with the running of the prison, but we do serve as liaison. It's the fire chief, the police chief, the, various people from City Hall, the college, the hospital, and me. And as I said, it's been very interesting.
And what is it that you?
Pardon?
What is it that you try and do?
We've been very lucky in Danbury. The problems between the city and the prison have been minimal. I think it was a problem to the people who live near because they have a rifle range, and they're up by the lake, and there's hills, and it would reverberate. So people complained, and it got taken care of. The hours were set and so forth, and anything like that, because they also share a big part of the lake. They have quite a bit of lakefront, and of course nobody's allowed anywhere near it. So they tried to be good citizens, and they tried to keep the prison as good a neighbor as they can be. And part of one of the nature areas backs up to them, and they have a wonderful relationship with them. They do, if they can help them in any way, they do. If they can help the city in any way, they would. Painting tables, picnic tables, say, up at the lake or whatever. A lot depends on exactly what the prison is at any given time. At one point, it was all men. One point, it was women. One point, it was women in the camp. And now it's a men's prison and a woman's specialized unit, and then a camp, which is very low security. My husband's claim to fame, tell her about the prison with your dad.
Oh, we were there, I think it was the 75th anniversary of the prison, a few months ago, and they were introducing people, so they want to know, who had been here and seen it, and I raised my hand and said, I was here when it opened. They opened it up to the public, and I was a little kid, and my father and I, we went up there, and
I think it was 75 years.
yeah, and enjoyed the opening of the Federal Correctional Institution in Danbury.
Oh, wow.
But you could name the units. I
Yeah,
remember
well,
that.
the units were named after states,
Yeah.
New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut. But I was the only one at the party that was there for the original opening of the FCI. My grandmother was the founder of the United Jewish Center on Deer Hill Avenue, and she got it all, as much as possible, got her sons, which would be my uncles and my father, to also become members. It was the beginning of the Jewish community in Danbury. And my granddaughter is the only fifth-generation member of the center up there. There's, fairly large congregation, but
Oh, wow.
she's the only person that's a fifth.
Yeah, that's local, because there are others, but
Yeah, local, yeah. So she's the only fifth-generation member of the
and
UJC on Deer
very
Hill
proud
Avenue.
of it. Well, how about your mother's family?
My mother was from New Bedford, Massachusetts, a well-known whaling area. My grandfather had what I would call a quartermaster store. He fitted the members of the whaling ships when they went out to sea, and we were, not too long ago, we were in the museum up there,
Beautiful museum.
beautiful whaling museum in New Bedford, and we saw a picture on the wall of my grandfather and his store with 3 or 4 captains from the whaling ships serving him liquor. So he knew how to get customers in that store. So.
Well, there was the board. It listed what ships were where and who the captains were.
Yeah, my mother knew the captains, and it was a fairly active industry.
Yeah, it was a big industry, and unfortunately, it burned, so that the building doesn't exist. The pictures and that are all at the museum, and
But many of my uncles had traveled pretty much around the world as a part of the whaling industry.
It's fascinating.
my mother's family. My father was born in Reading and lived there. My mother was born in Ridgebury, part of Ridgefield. Her uncles had farms there. Her ancestors came to America in the 1630s.
Wow.
I'm trying to think of who they were. Oh, Sir Richard Saltonstall and the John Winthrop Colony. In the 1630s, they came into Watertown, Massachusetts. He came in as an indentured farmer. And by 1635, he'd earned his freedom. And they stayed in that area for a short time. They were Puritans. And then they went to Providence, Long Island. And from in the 1640s, and then they came into Connecticut. They went from Providence, Rhode Island, they came into the Connecticut River area. And then they were in the Greenwich, Stamford area as settlers. And they, I think that my uncle, I had 2 uncles, and one was a historian. He was also something to do, I guess he was in charge of alumni at NYU or whatever, but he was really a great historian, and he's done a huge booklet on, on the Reynolds family and so forth, but they stayed in this area. I guess I'm it. I'm trying to think of
I
it.
graduated at DHS, Danbury High School, class of 1950. And we still have, I would say, quarterly meetings. We meet in a restaurant for lunch. And the last time, well, we had a reunion with maybe 20 people were able to show up. But one of the last meetings we had a group of about 7 or 8 gentlemen. In the next room was, a bunch of women. They were from the class of 1945. So you can imagine, there was nobody under 90 there.
Wow.
in their class. So I think they had more members than we did. So the women lived longer than the men. But it's pretty interesting. And we still have them. So the next meeting is in March.
Well, many people live in, they're in Florida or wherever, or in homes, and homes. But we still see, Ned Moore is my classmate. Ned and I went to high school and to college and so forth together. We've been blessed with good friends, long friends, and really a happy life here. So I don't think you can ask for anything more.
That's lovely.
Do you have any questions that you would like to ask us?
Oh, no, everything you've shared has been great. This is exactly.
Well, it's the living truth.
I'm trying to think of it. I don't think there's anything else. Oh, the tricentennial, I do want to mention, we had a paid director. That was one paid position, and that was Marianne Freed. Marianne's husband was the editor of the News Times, but she was a wonderful help to us. After we finished the tricentennial, she went into business, a business called Made in Connecticut. If you know anything about Ithaca, New York, and Cornell and Ithaca College, they have a Made in New York store. And Marianne's son went to Ithaca College, ours went to Cornell, and we knew of the store. So she opened a Made in Connecticut. And eventually we had a mail order business together called Connecticut by Mail. Unfortunately, we were told that you're supposed to be in business to make money, not have fun. But she became head of the downtown council. So almost all the people that we know have been active in the community, active in their church, active in their synagogue, cared about the city, volunteered in all kinds of ways, whether it's Junior Service League ran an Aunt Nellie's, which was used furniture, but especially used clothing and so forth. Now there are other institutions that do this, like the Congregational Church and so forth. But I think people really tried very hard to make Danbury a better place, and it is.
I just remembered the time that I worked in Norwalk. I guess it was in the late, after I got out of the service. So I guess it was in the late 60s, early 60s, late 50s. And working in a drugstore, you're able to adjust your hours. So I avoided the early morning rush, and I avoided the late afternoon rush. So I adjusted my hours, and they were going to work and upgrade Route 7. That's about 50 years ago, and I think they've done a little bit of it, but it's still a hazardous trip. So my experience on Route 7 years ago.
Well, we look at Route 84. It's made a difference in everyone's life. And
You remember when it came in?
Oh yeah, a lot of well, the big thing was getting rid of the fare. People did not like that.
Right.
I have to say, I was probably the only person that was not that unhappy, but but they liked the races on, what was it, Saturday nights?
I did go to that, midget races. I didn't go to Stockard, but they had midget races.
Yeah, the people really, it was great entertainment. The only way I saw it was when we had a Friday off from school to go to the fair. Other than that, and it was a great opportunity for some of the organizations in Danbury, like the Lions Club, to earn.
Well, didn't you say you liked the apple pie or something?
Oh, yeah. The apple pie and the gingerbread, that was about it. When it first started, of course, it was a big agricultural thing, but that got less and less and less and less. Now we have to go to up into Litchfield County, which I recommend. If
Goshen Fair.
Yeah.
Or Durham.
Yeah,
Durham.
Wonderful. Yeah. So we're happy people.
Yeah.
Our kids are happy. We're happy. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you
Yeah,
so much
thank
for
you.
coming.
Been nice to
It's been a
share.
pleasure.